A quote, hang on. Hey people, it's NIyas talking. So for those of you who are interested, I chose this because I saw a post saying Jill Scott wanted to move to Amsterdam to escape the racism in America. And I thought this was very interesting because of what this court has basically done. So let's read this article. A court just confirmed to be Dutch is to be white. Hague District Court recently ruled that ethnicity can be used to single out passengers for checks at Dutch airports. Please come with me, sir. This is what Mapanzu Bamenga, a city councillor and academic from Eindhoven, Netherlands, heard soon after arriving at the airport of his hometown for a short work visit to Italy in 2018. He quickly realized that he'd been selected for an extra security check because he is a black man. After all, he was a Dutch national arriving at the Dutch airport holding a Dutch passport. It was clear there was no obvious reason for him to be singled out like this, other than the color of his skin. It was not Bamenga's first experience of racial profiling in the Netherlands. This is, after all, not a rare experience for Dutch nationals from minority backgrounds. I myself have been pulled out of passport control queue at the Schiphol Center for a routine security check in the past. I was on my way to a conference in the United Kingdom where I would give a lecture on, I am not making this up, racial profiling. When faced with such discrimination, we all want to scream, is this because of the color of my skin? Is this because you think I do not look Dutch enough? But we don't usually say anything out loud because we do not want to agitate the customs officer and be held longer than necessary. We go along with it and swallow the pain. But after his experience in 2018, Bamenga decided to do something about it. He first lodged an official complaint and later, with the backings of rights groups like Amnesty International, Radar, Control Alt Delete, and People NJCM, he brought a case against the Dutch government to end racial profiling. Merchosi Police Force Kmore, which is in charge of border security in the Netherlands, tried to legitimize its officers' decision to single out Bamenga for special questioning, by claiming that he had matched a risk profile because he walked quickly, was traveling on his own, was well dressed, and he looked not Dutch. On that day, Bamenga was a lone traveler in a tailored suit walking rapidly at the Eindhoven airport. In many ways, he was no different to thousands of other Joe travelers passing through the airport every single day. But unlike them, Bamenga was selected for special questioning. The deciding factor, and there is no other way around it, was his so-called non-Dutch appearance. In Bamenga, the Dutch police saw not a Dutch professional coming home from a work trip, but a potential Nigerian trafficker. On September 22nd, the Hague District Court finally reached a verdict on Bamenga's case. Ethnicity does not have to be an objective indication of nationality, but it could be, the judge ruled. Ethnicity cannot be the only criteria for singling out passengers for extra check, the court said, but it could certainly be one criterion among others. With this ruling, the court has lumped together skin color and nationality. It cemented the idea that to be Dutch is to be white. Of course, this was something racialized Dutch people already knew, but the court ruling made it official. The ruling is the legal and seemingly sophisticated stand-in for its uncritical and banal version. Well, we are white and they are black, is it not so? As a result of decades of migration and colonialism, thousands of people from different corners of the world, some voluntarily, some not, ended up in the Netherlands, and their presence in the country cracked the notion of Dutchness as whiteness. The post-colonial migration from the Dutch East Indies and the Moluccas in later Suriname and the Dutch Antilles, the labor migration from Turkey and Morocco, and the more recent arrival of refugees from Bosnia and Somalia. Bosnians are white. Somalia, Iraq, Iran, Congo, and so on shook up the whole idea that being Dutch equals being white, or so you would think. But being white or black are not objective indicators of anything. These racial classifications are political, not biological. What we are dealing with here is a colonial legacy. How black does one have to be regularly pulled out of queues in Dutch airports? How white is white enough to not be routinely selected for random questioning? These questions are indeed uncomfortable and hard to answer, but what then, for goodness sake, does Dutch looking mean? The court's assumption that racism or discrimination can only occur if the security forces choose an individual for additional questioning solely or predominantly based on their racial ethnic characteristics is also problematic for multiple reasons. The ruling gives the impression that there is no problem with racial profiling as long as ethnicity is used in combination with other criteria. Moreover, the practices of security forces are often messy and complex. When selecting someone for questioning, they likely rely on an amalgam of different criteria, including, but not limited to, ethnicity and race. In this context, it's almost impossible to determine what the predominant factor is behind an officer's decision to single an individual out for additional security checks at an airport, bus station, or on the street. Therefore, the court's decision does nothing to stop security forces from using ethnicity as the sole or predominant criteria when deciding who to question. The KMR, for its part, claims that ethnicity does not play a role in its generalized risk profiles in the first place. These profiles are composed based on complex statistical calculations, it says, and correspond to a wide range of developments, for example, in the field of migration. They argue that its profiles are composed based not on race, but neutral and quantifiable risk indicators, such as the individual in question's airport of departure, the airport of arrival, the nature of their plane ticket, one-way return, the age or gender of those traveling with them, and so on. Considered independently from each other, these indicators seem neutral, but in combination they can clearly become a proxy for ethnicity or race. And the court's ruling on Bamenga's case gives a carte blanche to security forces to continue using such seemingly neutral criteria to legitimize racial profiling. In the Bamenga case, the judge seemingly gave precedence to the alleged effectiveness of the stops above principles of non-discrimination. This was a major failure. It is the responsibility of courts to keep the excesses of security forces in check, overturn their problematic decisions, and put an end to discriminatory practices. As far as I'm concerned, we should rid the world of all forms of racialized thinking, including the uncritical embrace of it among progressives. But let's focus on the ingrained racialized thinking in our institution. We cannot build a post-racial world while our security forces, leading institutions, and courts continue to casually lump together race, ethnicity, and nationality. Bamenga was in Italy to give a lecture on the meaning of liberty. Perhaps Dutch courts and other institutions should spare a few hours to listen to what he has to say to make sure the meaning is not lost in his own country. Now, for a lot of my viewers, we all know how this goes. In America, it's perfectly legitimate to racially discriminate against people. You can pull people over and just say, well, I smell drugs, or we had a reason to think that because the car looked stolen, etc., etc. And the fact that the officers can be pulled up and they almost exclusively or predominantly stop black drivers, even though they may be a very small minority in that community, is just brushed off. If you read, the New Jim Crow, you'll see how these kind of practices have been enshrined in law. The Fourth Amendment basically means nothing. You just say, I smell drugs, and you can search whatever you want, however you want. And just here in England, I was seeing a post that the police had stopped and borderline strangled a 13-year-old child because they were looking for a black male with a knife. And so that gives them carte blanche to just grab any black male. Anyway, but this is for all those people who keep saying that discrimination will end if they just go somewhere else. So anyway, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. I'm going to leave this article in the description. If you would like to support this channel, leave my Cash App. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'll leave it there as well. If you want to buy one of our t-shirts, I'll leave that link there as well. Peace.